Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Coach Krisler's Convos. Do not attempt to adjust your devices. We are back with Dr. Amy Beard. If you've been here before, you know that Dr. Beard was one of our earlier guests. And so welcome back, Dr. Beard. Thank you so much for joining me again today.
Thanks for asking. I'll come on anytime you want because you're one of my biggest. I love you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. So when we first talked, we got to hear all about your personal journey and just how you got started and just a little bit about really how functional medicine has helped you personally. And so today, what we're going to talk about is how you have come to use health coaches in your functional medicine practice and what that's really meaning for you and for your coaches and for the people that utilize them. So first of all, if you could just tell everybody that maybe didn't see that first episode with you a little bit about your medical background.
Sure. So way back in the day, I started this health journey and health education accumulation by becoming a dietitian, and learned quickly that I was missing a lot of key principles. I had the nutrition component, and even then there were some things that I didn't quite agree with.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while, worked at various clinics and hospitals, and decided to go back to medical school at the tender age of 32. I was granny in the class, but that was okay. And so I went to medical school here in Little Rock, in Arkansas, and graduated with a medical degree. And then pursued a family medicine residency, which I enjoyed, but the real issues with medicine became just right in my face. Mm-hmm. Treating symptoms with pills and procedures, and no one ever really got better, and they just ended up on more pills and getting more procedures. So I was like, okay, this is not what I want to do. This is not what I signed up for. And nobody's giving me answers as to why these people are having these issues to begin with. Right. So I decided to go to the ER right out of my residency because I thought, okay, I feel like I could help people there versus just getting them hooked on more pills. And loved the ER, but the stress of it, as you can imagine, was a lot. And it was wrecking my health. My health was already an issue. I had had most of my colon removed. When I was in residency, they thought I had MS. I was having all kinds of issues. Of course, the stress of residency and all the things that entails wasn't helping matters either. So, when I got burned out of the ER, I opened up my own concierge medical practice because I knew, I was just like, lifestyle has so much to do with the human condition and all the issues that we have. That's where I want to spend my time focusing. I don't know all the root causes right now because no one's taught me that.
Right.
And I felt like I was just, I was doing a lot of independent research and had it was a God thing. I met a functional medicine certified physician one day out of nowhere. And it was really that conversation that I had with her that day on my sofa in my office that changed the trajectory of my life and my practice.
Yeah.
It's wow. Really crazy because I started going to the functional medicine conferences that she had recommended, and I was confronted with information I had never heard before and was thinking, I just spent 4 years in medical school and 3 years in residency and never heard any of this stuff.
Crazy.
And so I started instituting these principles that I was learning at these conferences in my practice and started seeing a lot of great results, even in my own self. I healed myself first, and then I started helping others heal themselves as well. And so from then on out, I was functional medicine all the way.
Hooked. You're hooked.
I am hooked. And I got my certification back in 2017, and have continued to have a functional medicine practice that has only grown since then.
That's awesome. Yeah, every time I have one of these conversations, there's always that personal connection, whether it's the individual themselves or somebody they love, their child, something just really was like not right with themselves or that person. And they pursued that thing. They started, researching, as you said, and just looking into and asking questions. And that's how they came upon it. And I'm so glad you said it's a God thing, because I don't believe in coincidences, and I know you don't either. So, it's fantastic that at that moment he put the right person on your path, to really just help you kind of narrow down and say, okay, this is it. This is the thing that's really going to help people, versus putting band-aids on symptoms and masking what's really there. So that's so cool.
Yes.
So I would love for you to tell a little bit about your functional medicine training and certification. I have found that there's a lot of people that really don't understand what that means, what that entails. They think, well, if it's a functional medicine doctor, they do something different, which you do, but they think, oh, well, is she an MD? Is she a DO? What does that really mean? So can you explain that for us?
Yeah, so functional medicine, a lot of your listeners may or may not know, it's really an approach to the human condition, the problems that we encounter, the health issues, just looking at what could be the causes and mediators driving these chronic symptoms. So it is definitely science fact. Okay, there is science involved here. And it really comes down to understanding how this body of ours works at a molecular level, and how that and how we interact with our environment and what our environment is doing at that cellular level. And so we are diving deep into mitochondrial function, detoxification pathways, gut health, which for me, I think is like the top. That's like, you have to have that right or nothing else works. But we're learning about the thyroid and the endocrine system, and then how like your stress, your sleep, your activity, your hydration, your toxin exposures, and how all of those things are manipulating your body, and how that's being expressed through symptoms that you may have. And so when you do, and I think of functional medicine doctors as really health investigators. We're like private detectives all up in your business, asking you all kinds of questions to get a good idea of who you are. You must understand who the patient is, not just focus on their symptoms, but who the patient is, what they've encountered, what's been going on throughout their life. And that gives you a much better idea of where to go digging and what to really look at and what to address. And yes, we have our own tests that we like to use, but we also use the standard stuff too, because that's valuable as well. But, I see, and I think we've had this discussion before, there's a lot of people out there who are claiming to be functional medicine physicians or practitioners, and they know just enough to be dangerous. They've not gone through any type of formal certification program, and not all certification programs are equal, So I chose to go with the Institute for Functional Medicine because I feel like they are the ones that are they're well organized. They've got this great machine going. They put out really great content and support for their practitioners. And so that's who I chose to go with to get my certification. And I'm glad I did. And so, there's, again, just because someone calls themselves functional medicine practitioner doesn't mean, they have a good understanding of the functional medicine principles and how to utilize them to help people understand what they're doing to cause these problems, and how to address them best. I said there's a lot of testing out there that's being done. I think the more experienced your practitioner, the less likely they are to rely on tests. Not that tests aren't useful. We use a lot of testing, but I don't necessarily jump on board from the get-go with a lot of tests because it typically is not going to change what I do. So that's how I look at any type of test. If I order it, is it going to change what we do? If your diet's a mess, if you're not sleeping, if you're not even attempting to work out, if you have all these horrible habits, why do we need a test?
Right.
Of course, those results are going to be all over the place.
Yeah, seriously.
I'm not just going to start throwing magic supplements at you either. Although I like my supplements. I find them to be beneficial, and I've been at this for a while, so I know that they are indeed helpful. But again, the goal of that is to always get you down to the bare minimum that you need. And I think functional medicine has gotten a bad rap over the years because there are people who are just want to throw test and then throw supplements at people without really working on the major things that are causing the problems. And that's where health coaches come in. You guys, I could not do what I do and have a thriving practice without my health coaches. No way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what a great explanation, because I love the health investigator idea, because really a lot of digging is needed in order to really get to what is causing the problem, and not just what do all these symptoms mean in terms of a diagnosis. The diagnosis is great, but really once you get our diagnosed, that's just a place to start, right? You got to do a lot of digging and a lot of looking at. And one thing I noticed a big difference for me was when I would go to a conventional medicine trained doctor, completing the intake form was like, 2 pages maybe. I go to my functional medicine doctor, and I have a functional medicine GP, and then I have a functional medicine gynecologist. And filling out the paperwork for them was like, you know what, I just need to sit down with a cup of coffee and my water and just, take some time, because even just the intake form is really looking at so many different things and asking so many different questions. And then going in and having that first encounter with that doctor, they go through the intake form. They actually pull it out, they look at it. Oh, I noticed this. Well, can you tell me about this? And so it's way more in depth than I think people realize it is.
Should be. I mean, we're also very different. And our symptoms, while you may have two people with the same symptoms, the causes of those can vary greatly. So you really need to understand, again, the person. And we have patients who complain about the intake forms and how long they are. And I was like, listen, you can pay me to ask those same questions, or you can do it for free on this, at your own pace. But it's important that I have that information, because it's going to spur other questions that are very important at trying to understand why you're having these issues. So it's really just a complete mindset change for people. And we have to kind of get them past that point before we can even really get to the meat of the matter. And so we've actually started, and I've got to do a video this weekend to kind of talk about what we're talking about right now. And so people understand what they're getting themselves into. We have a vetting practice right now. We don't let anybody sign up for our practice. They have got to understand what we're going to do so that their expectations are where they need to be, and they're ready to do the work.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about your health coaches that work in your practice. So when somebody comes to you and they are looking for help, what do you tell them about your practice and how you have health coaches as a part of that?
So sure. So in my practice, and it has evolved since I first did it. At first, I did not have health coaches. It was just me and Dr. Kynard. She's a DPN, and it was just us. And we soon realized that, wow, these patients, their lifestyle choices are not good, and it's driving their issues. And we need somebody to help them understand that, help them overcome any obstacles that are occurring in their life so that they can't do the things they need to do, and just help change, educate them so that they stop doing these things. And so I think it's probably been within the last 5 years. I think 5 years ago is when we started incorporating health coaches. And I was like, oh, I wish I would have done this, and so what happens in my practice is everybody sees either me or Dr. Kynard for a first step appointment. That's when we are reviewing all those forms you spent, a lot of time filling out. At least some of you didn't. And I will call you out on it too.
Yeah, right. Excuse me, this is blank. I need to talk to you about this.
Did you forget about it? And then I'll have this intense, in-depth conversation with them, ask them more questions. I get a really good idea of who they are, what might be going on, at least initially, and I write out a care plan. I get very detailed about my concerns in my note and the plan of action that I want us to use right now, short-term and long-term, covering testing is needed, what supplements we want to start them out on. And everybody's different, right? And so I tell them from then on, you are going to see one of my certified health coaches. And they are the ones that are going to help you implement the things I want you to do to overcome and resolve all of these issues. And at first, people are like, the ones that are going to roll their eyes. They think they don't need a health coach, And I tell them, you don't know what you don't know. All right. Even I, as a functional medicine doctor, have used a health coach. Okay. We just need some accountability and somebody objective looking from the outside in, because it's hard to do that when you're in the midst of a lot of health issues. You need somebody guiding you, keeping you on track, helping you overcome obstacles that you are putting up often yourself to, and then just a lot of education. And so I find my health coaches are absolutely invaluable. I could not do what I do without them. No way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned certified health coaches. Can you explain why that certification is important to you, and what are you even talking about when you say you use certified health coaches?
So there's, as you know, there's several different certification programs out there for functional medicine health coaches. And there's a few that I'm most familiar with, and that I tend to only look at those candidates, if they have certain certifications, because they're not all equal. And and the ones that I know who have come through certain programs, I know that they're going to have these certain core principles covered. I don't have to worry about their knowledge in these areas because I know they have it. Although I still continue to mentor my coaches on a regular basis. And I think that's very valuable too, is if you have some health coaches who at least have a functional medicine physician they can throw things at every now and then. I know you come to me sometimes, Krista, with questions, and I love it. And that's good too. I think we all should be talking to each other. Yeah. That's how you learn, right? And so I have had people who have come to me who have seen not certified, but just health coaches. And it was apparent that they caused a lot more problem for the patient. Just really bad advice. And I've seen a lot of that. And not only with health coaches, but physicians who have claimed to be functional medicine minded as well. And seem to like to charge people a ridiculous amount of money for what they got too. So, and it just gives functional medicine a bad name at the end of the day. So I don't mind calling that out because you hate it too, So I don't know if you feel that's that way or not either, but that's the way I do. And I don't have a problem calling people out like that. We had a patient just the other day who spent $10,000 with a chiropractor to learn some health education to help herself.
Wow.
Yes, 10 grand.
I have, that's wow. I have, okay. I've had many people ask me, so, who do you recommend? Or, are there doctors in our area that are functional medicine or what have you? And what I have done is I've kind of started compiling a list of doctors or nurse practitioners, PAs, whoever that I've actually met. I've been to their practice. I've asked them a lot of questions. I find out, their process. I find out how much they charge people, all of those different types of things. And I have a list of people that I will recommend. And if somebody is recommended to me, then if possible, I will connect with that person. I'll ask them the questions. I will go through, what their process is and things like that. So yeah, I think it's really important. There's a lot of people that you can follow on social media, for example, but you're not necessarily able to get to know those people. And so, I do think it's important to know them, to
Yes.
meet them, to talk to them, to ask questions, almost like a job interview.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because when it comes to your health, especially, you want to have somebody who's really going to be in your corner, who is, I get it. It's their job. You got to earn a paycheck. Like, you got to pay your bills.
Absolutely.
I get that. But at the end of the day, what's their real motivation? Is it just the money? Is it just,
Mhm.
selling you their product? What is it?
Right.
And you can really tell after you've talked with people, after you learned about their training, after you find out their process and how much they charge and all of the different things, you can choose, yeah, I'm going to put you on my list of resources, or you're not really my people and we need to go ahead and move on. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
and
important.
I think experience is a big deal.
Mhm.
And the hard thing about functional medicine practices is it's hard. It
Mhm.
is hard to establish one and maintain one because of the out-of-pocket expenses. People want to use their insurance. I think it's almost like oil and water. I tried it. It did not work well. I spent the majority of my time filing insurance stuff and trying to get paid for things that we did, and it was just I was over it. So
Mhm.
we really try to keep our costs down because we understand that it is out of pocket, but at the same time you get what you pay for too.
Right.
It's not what I have seen, and so we are very cognizant of that. I am a realist. I understand that we all weren't born with silver spoons in our mouths. Okay. And I don't want my practice to become a silver spoon practice. I want it to be accessible to as many people as possible. And again, that's why I like to use health coaches, because that's really who you need to be working with. You don't need to be spending all of your money on the doctor who's going to charge more.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You can get the same amount of, and everybody thinks that there's some type of this one little thing that must be missing in their body,
Mhm.
that if the doctor could just find, then they would be all well and they
Mhm.
wouldn't need to worry about what they ate, how much activity, whether or not they were on their phone till midnight that night. And they could just go away, live like they were, if they could just find this one little thing that was missing, and it has to be some type of genetic mutation. And And so it's just trying to make people understand. And a lot of people don't want to hear that what they're doing in their life is really the biggest drivers of their issues. It's so
Mhm.
hard for people to hear that, because that means they need to do something
Mhm.
about it.
Mhm. Yeah, personal responsibility is key to
It
health.
is, and no more pill for an ill. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing to help people overcome, is just like this isn't the pharmaceutical mindset over here. That mindset has got you to where you are for the most part. So maybe just try it out a way.
Yeah. So with your coaches, once they meet with the patient meets with you and you give them sort of a functional but a medicine prescription, if you will, when they begin to work with your coaches, what's something they will experience in those maybe first few meetings?
Yeah. And so the first few meetings are much more intense from a health coach perspective. And you probably understand this too, is because you're trying to understand the patient and you're trying to develop a rapport as well and see where the patient's coming from, see what those hot spots are. And so you've got to spend time learning about the patient, but also, you know, these patients, when they come to you, they are ready and you've got to capture them. They have come to you, they are ready to get started. You've got to keep the momentum going with them. So we, at first, we'll give them, you know, we try not to overwhelm them because a lot of the brain fog is there. And so they just can't really absorb a lot of information. And so we're just trying to get them, for me, most people are, you know, we rehab their gut right off the bat. So a lot of the things that take place first initially is just gut health related things. And then helping the patient understand why their gut health is bad to begin with. Yes, diet, we know that you're eating processed foods, inflammatory foods all the time. But what about your stress? Why are you going 90 to nothing? Why are you getting up at 4 a.m. and going to a HIIT class when you're already sleep deprived? What, you know, and there's these things that they think they should be doing, but absolutely should not. And so I think that's great from the health coaches. They are really good about digging in there and helping the patient see and making the connections between you did this and this is what happened. Do you understand that connection? And, you know, again, a lot of the patients are just, they don't think they need them, but they absolutely do. And once they start using them, they get it.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the most powerful questions I have found I ask people is, when was the last time you felt good? Like, when was the last time that you felt physically strong, your emotions were well balanced, and you just were thinking straight and you just felt good? And, you know, you wouldn't think that a question like that would even need to be asked, especially of a person who, from all, you know, kind of from the outside, looks like they're fine. They don't look like there's anything wrong with them. But when you ask that question, and people really have to stop and think, wow, it's been some years. You know, for some people, maybe it's been some weeks or some months, but for many people, it's been years since they felt well. That is a powerful question. Are there other questions that you have heard your coaches ask, or maybe you've yourself asked of your patients that really have been, you know, kind of these really powerful questions?
That's a powerful one. And we also, as part of the vetting process, we're like, are you willing to give up the things that made you sick? You know, and they'll hesitate. And then we're like, okay, if you have to, you know, if you need to think about that, that's great, but get back to us when you're ready. Because, but a lot of them don't even realize that they don't think they're doing anything. They just think they've heard the whole, it's your age, it's your genetics, you know?
Yes.
And so you're like, no, that's a cop out, because that's coming from people who don't even understand root causes and mediators of chronic disease. So of course they're going to go there because they don't know anything else. So that one is a very good question. And then, you know, it's also what we're finding is, and this is what my coaches are telling me, is there is a lot of unresolved trauma in a lot of patients, and they are not, that's why you need to develop a rapport with these patients, because you're not going to get that information right off the bat from a lot of them. Some of them, yes, they have no problem telling you about these horrible pasts that they've lived through and how that is continuing to cause problems in their health because it's not been resolved. And so I think our coaches do a really good job of kind of helping our patients feel comfortable about talking about those difficult things because they care. My patients, just like I know you do, is we got into this business to help people, right? To help people overcome all these problems because we use this process as well, and it helped us overcome the same problem. So we want to share it with the world.
Right.
Because trust me, there are easier ways to make money than owning a functional medicine practice and being a functional medicine health coach. So many easier ways. But this is where God has put us, and my coaches are of the same mindset. You know, we're Christians. Our faith is everything, and we understand how God plays a major role in the health and healing process. And so we tend to get those patients anyway, because I'm very outspoken about my faith on social media and things like that. So, and even though, and some people aren't aware of that, and that's fine. But I think it's these more in-depth conversations is where you start to get the good stuff out. And that, you know, and it takes a lot of meetings to get information that, boom, wow, okay, that changes things.
Right.
Why were you just waiting now until to tell us that? Perhaps we did not do a good job of asking that, or, you know, trying to get that information. But that doesn't happen too often. But when it does, it's like, okay, thank you for sharing that. That changes the whole direction of where we were going.
Yeah.
You know, that comes through having discussions and talking with your health coach.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, the desire to really help people and to see their lives changed for the better is such a foundational motivation for people who get into this business. My personal, you know, group that I love to help is moms, especially working moms, because I've been in that position of, you know, just being exhausted all the time, or having these crazy mood swings, or sitting in my closet crying, you know, because I didn't know what else to do. That's just what it was, you know. And everybody's saying, well, you're just a mom and you're just busy and you're just working and, you know, whatever. And that's just how it is. And for me, I was like, this cannot be my present and my future. It just can't be. Like, how do you live day to day like this? No way is this going to be my present and my future anymore. And so for, you know, the women who I love to coach, you know, that's my desire, is to see them recognize that this does not have to be your present. It does not have to be your future. And, you know, there are so many things that you can do, even on a very small scale, that over time with some consistency are going to make a huge difference. So, you know, I think sometimes too, people come in with that, you mentioned that overwhelm of what could it be, you know, the nutrition, the exercise, the toxicity, the stress, you know, all these different things. And it's like, okay, breathe. We're going to start with one thing and let's see how that goes. Right. And then you're probably going to see some successes with that. It may not be everything. We'll start there, and then we'll move forward and add on something else. And the great thing about coaches, I think, is there's that constant connection and that constant check-in. So when people come to me and we say, okay, they tell me what goals they have, and I help them kind of figure out the goal and the action steps that are real life stuff, not these crazy lofty things that they can't do, but real life things. And they come back to me and they say, you know, I did this, but this didn't really work out. We talk about why it didn't work. What were the barriers? How can you overcome those? You know, how can I help you? What can I teach you, or, what resource can I bring to you? So I think that that's really, really important, is that overwhelm that so many people deal with, it doesn't have to paralyze you, right? I get it. There's so many things you can do. Let's start small. Let's start with one thing, and then do that thing consistently over some time,
Yeah.
and then move on to something else, right?
And it's all, and you're right, it's consistency. It is
Mhm.
doing the things day after day. Okay. The body takes time to rebalance. It will
Mhm.
not happen overnight. And if you think it will, you are going to be very disappointed. And you're
Mhm.
going to think you wasted a bunch of money with the functional medicine practice. The worst thing you can do is dip your toe in this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to meet with one time and see what happens. I would advise against that. You need to come into this with the mindset of, I'm going to give a health coach at least 3 months
Mhm.
of my time, and we're
Yeah.
going to see what happens, because that's what we ask. I'm like, if you could, we do things in 3 months, 3 month increments. Like, we need 3 months, and I think we can progress you to this point. We don't know, and it may
Right.
take longer. Just depends on the complexity of your problem. And I think that's what the health coaches are really good about, is just like, what are you doing good? What are you doing well? Where can you improve? Why did you stop doing that? Why did you start doing that? Let's talk about this, get you back on track. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's really
Mhm.
like therapy for a lot of patients, which my coaches, they didn't sign up to be therapists per
Yeah.
se. But they don't mind it, because
Mhm.
we're all humans and we're all trying to help one another just get through this. And most of the times we can relate to what they're going through, because we've all been patients ourselves. So we
Mhm.
understand the frustrations with what you've been through, what you've encountered with conventional medicine, how it has got you to this point. And then we're going to help you dig yourself out of this hole, because we have dug ourselves out of this hole as well. And we don't want you to make the same mistakes we did, or encounter those, those falls that we had to suffer. And maybe you can get through this process more quickly than I had to, because
Yeah.
was learning while I was doing. I was trying to figure out what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah.
Um, but by the grace of God, He directed me in the ways I needed to go. I learned a lot. And again, you've had your own health journey, so you can share that, and I think that's very powerful.
Mhm. Mhm.
Versus, and you're older. Okay, you're not old, Priscilla. You're older. You have children. You have a husband. You work, and these are the majority of the patients that we're seeing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
I think the majority of my patients, I don't know about you, but they're women between the
Mhm.
ages of 25, 65. That
Mhm.
that is where we are. They're moms, they're working, they're trying to do all the things, they're exhausted.
Yeah. Yeah. Women definitely are at the top of the list in terms of just sheer numbers
Yes.
of clients. Um, so one other thing I wanted to ask you that seems to be of some confusion with people is, what would you say is the difference between a health coach and somebody like a personal trainer or a nutritionist? Somebody in like that. Could you
Oh
kind of
yeah.
give your breakdown of that?
I'm a diet As a dietitian, I knew nothing. I knew nothing about functional medicine principles or root
Mhm.
causes. And I'm not here to harp on dietitians, but the training hasn't changed much, and it's still, not that great. They don't know about root causes and mediators of chronic disease. That was not in their curriculum as far as nutritionists and dietitians go. And that term gets used interchangeably a lot. And we don't have to go into the details about that. And then there's people, personal trainers, while they may know how to, help you build muscle and increase your cardiovascular fitness, they tend to have really poor nutrition backgrounds, in my view, from the ones that I have encountered. Now, there's some that do great. You know, they do their own independent research other than just what they learned in their certification program. But again, personal trainers, nutritionists, dietitians, unless they have gone through some type of formal certification program, are not going to know anything about root causes and mediators of chronic disease. And just telling someone to clean up their diet and eat a whole foods diet, and you know, that in itself can go a long way. But some people, I mean, it does not go well. There are things in the diet that you must understand about food and gut health, food sensitivities and tolerances, that you really need to understand and have a good understanding of, or you can make things much, much worse for people. And I have seen it happen. People who do the boot camps and stuff, just overworking these 40 and 50-year-old moms who are already stressed out and their adrenals are basically burned out, and they've got them out there doing burpees and, you know, eating a bunch of whole grains. And it's just like, this is horrible advice. And I've talked to people who've gone through these things. They're like, yeah, I don't feel good. You know, and I'm like, oh, I understand why. You know, and I don't want to bash these people, because they feel like they're doing what they need to do. And you know, the 25-year-old huge buff personal trainer guy out there with these women moms making them do burpees is like, I don't know, you might want to do a saliva cortisol kit on those gals before you start doing that.
Right.
So it's hard to vet and know what are these people, what is their knowledge base? How do they acquire their information? What makes them an expert at what they're doing? And that's when you just have to do some good old research. Like you said, vet them, ask them questions.
Yeah,
see
absolutely.
what the training has entailed. Was it just like a 6-month course in, you know, physical fitness and nutrition? I don't know. You got to start asking the questions, because they're not all the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know, it is really interesting. I get that question a lot of, well, you know, you're a health coach? Okay. Are you a nutritionist? Or also, what's your program? I'm like, I don't have a program. I mean, there are things that I do ask initially, and there are some questions that there's a process, right?
Yes,
After you're
the process.
Right. And we do a lot of conversation about nutrition and movement, but there are other things like what's going on with your hormones, or you know, what's going on with your sleep, or what's your stress situation like, or where do you live? What's your environment like?
Yes.
You know, there are so many things. I mean, one of the things that we realized with my husband and his job, and this just happened to kind of overlap with me learning all the things I've been learning about functional medicine, was he now he works from home, but before, when he was going into the office, about an hour into him being at the office, he would start to get a headache. And he would have a headache pretty much all day. He would get in his car, he would drive home, and about halfway home, his headache would start to subside. And, you know, we joked about them never cleaning the air ducts in the building. It was an old building.
Yeah.
And, you know, we would joke about it, but, you know, thinking back on it now, I'm like, there was something in those air ducts. They never cleaned them. It was an old building. You know, there may have been mold, there may all kinds of things that were triggering him, that were bringing on this headache. And so, you know, when you have conversations with people, when you get to know them, get to know their environments, their living situations, their work situations, and you find out, oh yeah, when I'm at home, I tend to have a headache. When I go outside, I tend to feel better. Or when I go to work, I have a headache. And when I come home, I'm good. Like, okay, you seeing a pattern here, sister? We gotta talk about this. We gotta figure out what's going on. And sometimes you can't change that environment. So what is it that you can change that is going to help you so that you're not, so at least your body maybe is detoxifying the way it's supposed to. So if you have to be in that environment, at least your body is ridding you of those poor, things that are going on in your body. So I think that's another thing that is really important in terms of the difference that health coaches,
Yes, thank you.
those things that provide.
You're trained to think like that because
Mhm.
we have a much better understanding of how the environment affects your health and all the
Yeah.
different ways that it can. So we're already thinking like these private detectives, right? Like, what's your job? What do you do day to day? What are you being exposed to? And so you can start getting to these root causes much quicker than you could
Mhm.
with somebody who's not even thinking like this.
Right.
Timelines are important, and that's why we even go back to like, tell me when you were a child, what kind of health issues did you have?
Mhm.
And just how were you raised? And that will give you big, red flags often right there. So
Right.
okay, something was amiss even when you were a child. Probably had a food sensitivity you were completely unaware of, and now it's just snowballed into all of these other issues and all of these other medications and things like that. And so that again is another reason why I think coaches are invaluable. They are trained to think like a private investigator when it comes to your health.
Yeah.
And then they offer ways to, like you said, mitigate. There's some situations, I know we can't all just quit our job and go find something else.
Right.
It'd be great if we could. And some of my patients have had to do that
Mhm.
because of mold. I mean, we're just talking about it. They've had to like abandon their houses, change jobs. I've had to write letters to their employers to like, can this person work from home instead of coming to the office because there's an obvious mold issue that you've not addressed. And so that right there, I think, and when you're already thinking like that, you can help so many people just
Mhm.
start putting pieces together.
Yeah.
Out there in the conventional medicine world, it's not going to happen.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And you have endocrinologists that think that what you eat doesn't even matter. I don't know what
Yeah.
to say about that.
Yeah. I don't either. Yeah, I'm currently coaching somebody who is going through cancer treatment. And it is everything in me to not say, what did your doctor even ask you this question? Like, so yes, it's sometimes as a coach too, we have to, take a step back and say, okay, let's talk about this.
Yes.
Because, there are a lot of folks out there who are treating people simply based on their training and the knowledge that they have. And it's not anything malicious.
Right.
They
Doing what they
just
think they
don't
should do.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why I tell people I don't want physicians to take what I'm saying personally. It's not against you personally. It's just the system in which you work and how you were trained that has failed millions and millions and millions of people, even though I know you meant well.
Absolutely.
You're a good person. I have lots of friends who are physicians, but they're still practicing in that conventional medicine model. And and people will tell me, well, which doctor, who do I need to see? And I'm like, well, it doesn't really matter because they're all going to do the same things because it's something called standard of care.
Right.
They have to do this.
Right.
And you'd probably be much better off if you would just go find a really, experienced certified health coach.
Mhm.
You should probably go that route. Stop going to the doctors and work with them. What do you have to lose at this point?
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing and you're getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's called insanity. Okay. So just try
Yeah.
things differently.
Yeah.
And I think once you start explaining root causes and mediators and helping the patient understand what they're doing and how it's causing the expression of these symptoms, the light bulb goes off and and then it's on, right? Then they're questioning everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's wonderful to see because you should.
Yeah,
Even
there's nothing wrong with asking a question.
and you can question me and why do I do the things that I do? You know, everybody is not above questioning. No.
Yeah. Oh, I so agree. And you're such a breath of fresh air. I love having these conversations with you. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your expertise. Thank you for serving the people so well. If people want to find out more about you, if they want to follow you on social, tell everybody where they can go.
Sure. So the website is simply amybeardmd.com. That is where you can find information just about the backgrounds of me and my health coaches, how we work, the things that we offer. I'm also on, of course, Facebook, Instagram, and that's where I do most of my posts is on those two outlets. Although I'm being very throttled on Facebook, shadow banned, I think is what they call it. I've been at 25,000 followers for 3 months, lost 1,000 overnight. And so I'm not sure what they're going on. Speaking too much truth on Facebook. But yeah, I think that would be a great place for people to follow me. I'm always trying to put out good content, little things that you can take home that I think are very important, at least what I'm seeing in my practice and what works for these patients and what works for these and where the problems really are for a lot of people. And I try to help people that way. We also have a podcast that we're about to get started again, finally. Right now it's under the name Self-Care is the New Healthcare, but I think we're just going to change it to Amy Beard MD and get everything consistent. But we're on Spotify and iTunes and also YouTube. You can watch the podcast as well. We have plenty on there right now, but we're about to get started back again because we got a lot of things to say. Oh yeah, absolutely. Information because much of what we do, Krisler, I have a Krista as a friend, is we educate. And education is important because you and I don't want repeat customers. Right. I really don't. I want you to get better. I know it's could be deemed as a bad business model, right? We don't want repeat customers, but we don't. That's not to this. Yeah, absolutely. We also know that you're going to fall off the wagon from time to time, and we're here for you when that happens. Right, exactly. So again, I thank you. This has been such a delight. I always love chatting with you. Y'all go follow Dr. Beard on Instagram and Facebook and check out Self-Care is the New Healthcare. They have several episodes that have already been recorded, so you can go back and listen to those episodes. They are a hoot because she and her husband, Paul, they be just going back and forth. It's hilarious. Yes. We argue from time to time, but it's a debate. It's a lively debate. It's fantastic. Y'all are so funny. Keep it real, because we're real people and we know you are too. Absolutely. Check those episodes out and then be looking for Dr. Beard's new podcast episodes to come out here in the future. And for all of you out there who enjoyed this conversation, go back and listen to the previous conversations that I've had. They're fantastic. Make sure you like this and subscribe and share it with all your friends. Until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.